What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Hammer and Chisel Performance Podcast. I'm your host, John Heck. As always, just want to open up with a quick shout out to the sponsors of the podcast, Troponin Supplements, keeping me decked out in the Power T bodybuilding jersey. Just dieted down, but the gain phase is coming, so hopefully I'll be filling out this tee here a little bit better than I am right now in the coming months. And then, of course, before every podcast, taking a dose of my favorite product of theirs, ATP. Little 300 milligram bolus of caffeine, but most importantly, there is a powerful nootropic component in there that just gives me a surge of mental focus, clarity, a little bit of mood boost, memory enhancement, all that good stuff. So I can be locked in and dialed in for these podcast conversations like guests that I have on today. So guys, use code HECK for a discount at the Troponin Supplements website. Check out all their products. And without further ado, I've got a treat for you guys. I have an absolute OG legend from the world of strength, performance, the fitness industry. So this guy, former wrestler, former bodybuilder, a strength and performance coach, warehouse gym owner, business consultant, and an OG in fitness YouTube, Zach Even-Esh. Welcome to the podcast, man.
John, thank you, my bro. Great to be here. And it was great to finally meet you at Summer Strong because, I've been following you since you were interning with our boy House.
I know. No, it was great finally meeting you. It's cool. Like, there's so many people in the industry I've followed for so many years, read their books, watched their YouTube, and like you feel like you kind of know them.
Yes.
And then you meet them in person for the first time. We met at Sornex Summer Strong, and then you realize like, oh wait, I've never met this guy in person. So it was great to finally meet you out there, man. And I gotta say, I love the brick backdrop you got right there. It's just fitting with your brand,
Yep.
Underground gym, the warehouse.
This is the office. I always tell my wife, I'm like, you send me down here like Sloth from Goonies, like locked down here. But I got to say, from a creativity standpoint, I would rather be in a office with a big window, a lot of sun. That's what I really prefer to do. So it's not odd for me to step out to a coffee shop for like 90 minutes to do some work and talking about caffeinating. I like to, actually we're talking about a book. I remember like when I was writing my book, I left the house a lot and I had heard stories of authors who would just kind of escape to the woods to do their writing, like way back in, the day where they would just take a typewriter with them.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like training camp for a writer going to the mountains.
Yeah. No doubt. So is that what you did? You kind of went on a little solo excursion, a little soul searching to write the book?
Yeah, I had to my first, in the early days I wrote a lot of the ebooks, 20 plus years ago. And then I was exchanging text messages, I remember, with Kelly Starrett and Brian McKenzie talking about training athletes, training youth athletes. I was talking about injuries, and Kelly Starrett responds, he's like, write a book, you damn genius. And I was like, genius? No way. But he said, like, you're always talking about these things. You have to write a book. And the mistake I made was, I don't know if it was a mistake, but I was always very busy because I had a gym and I was online and I'm a dad and I'm a husband and I'm trying to blend everything together. And I felt like the book had to be this perfect thing. And at that time, it wasn't easy to write a book. I'm pretty sure there was self-publishing on Amazon. I just didn't know how to use it. And those guys had partnered up with a company. The way it would work was would be partnered up with a co-author and photographer. They would interview you, and then they would transcribe it into a book. And long story short, that company came out. We spent something like 3 days together. I mean, thousands of photos. The photographer was awesome. He had spent time in Thailand doing like mini documentaries on Thai fighting and very unique like sport type events and experiences. He was awesome. But my co-author could not handle like, hey, we're going to meet at 11 a.m. Eastern. And that group of guys would basically work all night. They were like vampires and sleep all day. And long story short, my co-author bailed out. So I say to the owner of the company, hey, dude, so and so is a. Can I curse on this podcast, John?
Absolutely. You can say whatever the fuck you want, coach.
I said, hey, dude, so and so is a chicken shit pussy. He fucking bailed out. He quit. I go, do you have another co-author that could help me bring this book to life and make like a serious impact? He's like, no, we don't. He's like, it's up to him. It's kind of his project. So I said, all right, listen, I can't work with a guy who's quitting. It just goes against everything I talk about. So where do we go from here? He said, if you want to buy back the photos, you could do that. So I purchased all the photos. I put them on an external hard drive. And I'm thinking to myself, man, fuck this book. I'll just take all this stuff. I'll make it another ebook. And then I thought to myself, all right, man. So I always tell athletes to not quit, to fight through. And I'm going to quit. And I had a group of athletes, probably a dozen of them. I had them in the book for all the photos. I didn't want the book to be me and me. I felt like it needed to. I needed to share who was training in the gym, who was going through this journey. And so I got thousands of photos, literally something around like 3,000, a little bit more than 3,000 and a few hundred photos. And I said to myself, they just spent 3 days with me taking all these pictures. It's like 95 degrees all 3 days. I said to myself, I'll never be able to look myself in the mirror, or I'll tell my kids when they say, hey, what happened to your book, Dad? Oh, I quit. And I quit on all the kids. So I said, I got to write this book. So I had a email exchange with Tim Ferriss. And then we hopped on Skype, which shows you how long ago this is. Skype.
Yeah.
People don't Skype anymore. And we'll go back and forth. And he's like, hey, man, why don't you reach out to Dragon Door? Dragon Door was partnering up with people. And I said, I was thinking about that. And I didn't know anything about the publishing space, but Tim had gone through their RKC certification. And so I reached out to John Duquesne. I had written articles for Dragon Door probably since like 2004. By the way, this sounds like yesterday, but this was actually over 10 years ago, this book.
Right.
The reason why I remember it is there was a storm in New Jersey 13 years ago called Hurricane Sandy, just like leveled our town. I'm in a beach town, and we had a storm yesterday. So long story short, John wanted a little synopsis of the book and some sample photos. I loved Dragon Door. I had purchased every book they published, and I think this was like 2011, something maybe 2012. And so John and I go in on the book. Dragon Door is going to be the publisher. And when Hurricane Sandy hit, I said, this book can't just be another training book, meaning we've got all these photos of us doing sandbag squats, stone lifting, dumbbell training, thick bar training. So it was still a unique strength training book. But I felt like, does the world need another book on how to squat and how to carry stones? And as much as that was unique, I said, I got to take it deeper. So when that storm hit, we had no power for 2 weeks. And it got me thinking, I need to write this book. You know, my most inspiring book, you mentioned bodybuilding when I was younger, was Arnold's Education of a Bodybuilder.
Oh, yeah.
I read it for every day for like 3 years in a row. I took it out of my school library, like 90 through 93. Plus, I had the Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding, which even though it was Arnold's training book, it had these stories of his life. And
Right.
obviously, I'm not some kind of figure like that. And honestly, John, when you're like, oh, he's a legend, dude, I don't, I could never accept that word.
Man, in our world, in our niche, you are, as far as I'm concerned. You know, just interjecting here, you know Alan Thrall,
Of course.
Ryan Allsthrough, guys like
Yep.
yeah. So I just had them on the podcast, and I was kind of asking them, you know, who were some of your influences, you know, getting you into YouTube and gym ownership, and both of them said Zach Even-Esh.
It's crazy because those guys are amazing and inspiring, and they're humble, which I
Yeah, they
think
are.
is it's such a missing link in this modern day world of YouTube and whatever other network we have for influencers. And so when I wrote the book, that's what hit me, John, is I need this book to inspire my kids. I don't know why it's crazy, but I was like, what happens if I die? What is left behind for my kids to remember me by? We didn't know anything about AI 12 years ago. Now, at my funeral, my kids will just type something in and say, make a video of my dad, and they'll do it. But
no kidding.
That changed the way I wrote the book. And so I started, I remember telling John, hey, my deadline was approaching at the end of November. It was like December 1st. That storm hit at right before Halloween. So I said to John Duquesne, John, like, a lot of stuff just changed. I lost over half the members to my gym because the parents were like, hey, we got to cancel membership. My boat is destroyed, or I have a house down. They call it down the shore, down the beach. I got to replace this, or my vacation home got flooded. So my income went like, it was nuts. And I also felt like there was a bit of like an economic depression online. And I don't know if it was because of what happened to me through my experience through that hurricane. So I said, John, I just need an extension on this book. And so I started going away. I don't know how often I would do it, but we have a little like fractional ownership in Lake George. I went there for a weekend. There's nobody up there but the lake and the mountains. Another time, my wife got me like an Airbnb in the woods of New Jersey. I said it was like driving through where Friday the 13th was filmed. I was like, holy shit.
Right.
But all I did was type, abuse coffee, and do hundreds of push-ups. And I started just in no particular order, some life experiences. And so Arnold's books inspired me. And John, did you ever read the book The Way to Live by George Hackenschmidt?
No, I did. I'm familiar with it. I never read it.
Yep. So that book, I bought it. I don't even know if eBay was out when I bought it. Maybe eBay was out or there was another website, but I bought originals. Now a lot of people do, what do you call it? Like public domain. You could reprint books that were published before 1913. So that book was, I think, from 08. So I read that book, and it was part autobiography, part training manual. So that was inspiring as far as the style. So I would go away to write, and that would help me really clear my head. Here, I just told you my daughter just moved into school, but when I was writing that book 10 years ago, my son is 6 my son's 17. So actually that was, my bad, it's 2025. That storm was like 13 years ago. I think my son was 4, my daughter was 6. So trying to focus on writing a book when I'm wondering, we don't have power. I got to get hot meals for my kids. It just changed the way I looked at training and creating work in any respect that was going to inspire my kids. And so here we are, my daughter's in college, my son is 17. And so getting away is hard to do. You're a new father. And I think for you, I think sometimes like every 3 months, probably is sometimes a good break for our wives too. Like they like you should go away for 2 days to somewhere in the Appalachians, rent yourself an Airbnb and just friggin' write and work and brainstorm. Because when you're home, our focus is always caring for our wife, caring for our kids. And every 3 to 4 months, you should do that. And Napoleon Hill spoke about that. I don't know how long ago that was, but he spoke about the mastermind principle, about successful people should get with other successful people and just go camping in the woods.
I like that. I like that a lot. And that I think would be extremely beneficial for me because so much of what I do is, it's creative, right? Whether it's the podcast, the YouTube, the information that I'm putting out. I'm going to take that advice, actually. I think that's really good insight. And I'm just curious, when it comes to writing, do you feel like writing is kind of a lost art these days? Because we're kind of in the podcast era, the YouTube era, the social media era. Do you see a lot of people writing still, the written word?
Not so much in our niche of strength and fitness. And also my concern is, do people even read books anymore?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the other concern is, who wrote that book? Meaning, did ChatGPT just bust out that book?
Exactly. Yeah.
Somebody said something to me several months ago that they had bought a strength training book. And they're like, dude, I am telling you, and it was like a massively popular book. They told me just so many reviews. It was a very well-structured business book where if you were reading the book, you were segueing into their supplements, segueing into their online. So it wasn't a book to like change somebody's life. It was a book to grow the business, which
Exactly.
I understand that also. I understand writing and creating something, but yes, writing it's a lost art because we don't do it as much. We talk to the camera and the
Yeah.
Instagram. But I'll say this. Sometimes I come across my old writing, John, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is horrific." The context was not good. Like somebody reading it would maybe be like, "What?" Like it seemed like it was missing. My grammar was very poor. And so writing is a lost art. And I got to tell you, you will write your best work when you stop trying to write for everybody else and just write for John Heck, write for your family, write for, and you have a son or daughter?
He's a son, Logan, 8
Yep.
months old.
Writing for Logan to read this book when he's 18 or 40 years old. That's when your writing will really change. And a lot of times I write, like every morning I send out an email newsletter. And sometimes they're like in this structured manner of strength training tips, but other time is just completely from the heart with no real, this is what I want from it. And I'm just sharing like what's going on in my, my heart and soul. And but I picked up where I got a lot of that, John, is because when I read the old strength training books, especially Arnold's books, and looked at the black and white photos in the encyclopedia and the education for bodybuilder, the photos almost shared a story. Like I could look at a photo and I felt like I could hear the deep dish plates rumbling and clacking together. And so you have to write for yourself to be a winner. And if you want to really like dig deep into writing, Stephen Pressfield is a favorite of mine. And also there's a guy who writes, Stephen has written a lot of smaller books like The War of Art is amazing. And Turning Pro are books that you should just put on your desk so you could see the cover and remind you that, hey, man, I might be teaching people how to get strong and ripped, but I'm really like it's your art form.
Right.
It's your artistic self coming out.
I know you said you look back on your older work, and obviously you've improved immensely, which hopefully no matter what you're doing, if you look back at your older work, you look back and kind of face palm and say, God, I've come a long way.
Yes.
But did writing come natural to you? Like for me, I feel like I have a lot to say. I feel like I have a message, but when I put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, there's a disconnect for me. I am so much more natural speaking. I feel like I can get into a flow state just talking, conversing, public speaking, speaking to the camera. But when I'm writing, maybe it's because I just have big ass hands and it's kind of awkward for me to literally write. I'm a lefty, smudging the ink and all of that. But for whatever reason, I have a hard time literally putting pen to paper to convey my message. Was that something that came natural to you?
The first time I wrote something that was brought to my attention was good writing was when we had to write the college application essay. And I had a class, oh man, it was like it basically in my senior year, it walked us through applying to college. And you mentioned writing versus typing. I even tell our interns, I want you to write a 3-week mini cycle for you pick the athlete, an 8th grade football player, an in-season baseball player, a cross-country runner, and it's September. But I tell them I want you to write it because your creativity is going to work more than if you're on your computer, and then you might check your phone, and then you're going to open up YouTube, and now you're doing 7 things. You're not like in this world with no internet access. And so I wrote something and the teacher said, I felt like I was with you. And I think it happened from reading The Education of a Bodybuilder and the Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding, because when Arnold would write about escaping from the army and climbing over the cinder block wall and getting on a train to compete in the junior Mr. Europe. I felt like I was with him escaping the army barracks and getting on the train. And then he said I was punished. And by punishing me, they made me train for, 8 hours a day. And so I had to pace myself. And he's talking about storing strength training equipment in the tank. And I just felt like I was with him. Hey, let's take out this barbell. Or he spoke about doing 50 sets of squats in the woods with 250 pounds. And then he's like, then we would grill, chicken and steak and drink wine. And he's like, then we would have sex with the girls like we were gladiators. And I was like, oh man, you just felt like you were walking through this book, but walking through it with him. And I think that writing got me to just speak from the heart. And also, I think that when you have experiences that have changed your life. So, for example, whenever I listen to your podcast, people ask you, hey, why didn't you pursue the NFL? Your father was in the NFL, your brother's in the NFL, and you're talking about how much you love training. I think you have to take the thing you love as well as experiences that caused you a lot of pain, and you're able to write about it. So I remember writing in college, we had to go and watch movies, and it was called creative writing as a freshman. And we had to, first movie was A Bronx Tale. Did you ever see that movie?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Very inspiring movie. And then we had to write about like our most memorable moment in life. And I remember writing about the first wrestling match I won. And he's like, I felt like I was there with you, and you were talking about breathing heavy and watching his shoulder like inching towards the mat. He's like, I felt like I was right there with you. And I was just like, oh, I thought that's how you're supposed to write. And I think that the passion that I got from strength training, as well as the painful ups and downs from sports, which I'm sure you felt, it got me to write. And I think for writing, John, like you speak so eloquently, you could speak on training, and those are maybe some concrete things. But what's interesting is I wonder what you would write about when you're out in the cabin in the woods with no internet, and you just got your computer and a Word document, and your phone doesn't work, and maybe you start writing about that first time your dad. And is your brother in the NFL younger than you?
He is. He's 3 years younger for me. He's playing tackle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
So it'd be interesting, like the stories of how your dad was started to train you guys, and the stories of what your dad told you, who inspired him, what books your dad read. I think it would get your creativity going. I think what makes it hard about writing today is, even if I'm writing, I'm thinking about the promotion I need to do for my Train Heroic program. I'm thinking about the marketing I have to do for my gym, which is why writers back in the day, I don't know if they do it anymore, they disappeared. Like I call it, go to a cabin in the woods. Fighters did this. Boxers were notorious for getting away from women, getting away from friends, and just going into someplace in the woods. And also the nature brings out our more artistic side, whether it's water or lots of land. And I believe also, like, don't football teams still do this? They have a training camp, like somewhere out in, I know in where we have our place in upstate New York, I think about an hour or 30 minutes away. I'm not sure the Jets or the Giants go there. And it's a pretty, like, it's just woods and there's not a lot going on. Nobody's going to be like, hey, guys, we could go out tonight. Go do what? There's nothing to do.
Like the Chiefs, they still go to, I don't want to butcher the school. It's like Western Missouri State or something like that. They take every year, they take the team there for camp, and they're just in, prison style dorms and yeah, they totally get away. A lot of teams do that. Not all of them, but there's absolutely something to that. Just getting away from the distractions so you can just focus 100% on your art. I think that's a really good point. So when you were writing the book, was most of it completed when you were away on sabbatical, or was it kind of like you felt like you go to quota every day, I got to write 10 pages type situation like that?
Yeah. I would wake up in the morning, come down to my office, my phone would be turned off. Also, back then, 12 or 13 years ago, there weren't all these apps. I think there was Instagram. I don't think YouTube even was an app on a phone. I could be wrong, but my phone was turned off and I would write for hours, and then I would train, and then I would run my gym, not every day, but I had 2 gyms at the time. And so I may have been coaching almost every day. But then I also had some very strict things that I didn't miss. Like I never missed making breakfast for my kids. I never missed taking my kids to school. To me, that was everything. And then I always was the guy picking them up. So that was not common. There was not really any dads doing that. And I luckily had that kind of freedom because I had my 2 gyms. I had the online business. Now I've been at a high school. This is like my 7th year, I think I'm going on. But still my schedule is, I don't get to that high school till like 10:15. So I have a good schedule, but I never missed. I don't know why it was so important to me to never miss breakfast with my family. I did a business consultation 16 years ago with Gary Vaynerchuk, and we're going through kind of goals and all this stuff. And he's like, "What is your goals?" I was like, I want to have breakfast with my family every day. And I can't remember. It was something simple. And he's like, "That's it." Like he thought it was going to be this like extreme thing. But at that time, I would, my son wasn't born. I would wake up early and work on the computer. Then I would go to my school where I was teaching. And so I would sometimes leave for school in the morning and my wife and daughter were still asleep. Then after school, I would run my gym and then I would train after closing. So I might get home at 9 p.m. and usually my wife and daughter fell asleep by 8:30. And I said, "Dude, it's like a knife in my heart. I'm home. I'm just not seeing my wife and daughter." So he was like, "Oh man, I thought you were going to say I need to, just all this fancy stuff." And all I talked about was I want to have breakfast with my family. He was like in shock. And so that was a big thing for me. So I think what lights your soul on fire? What's important for you? And that creativity comes out when you think deeper than how do I get this person to lift to get a bigger deadlift? How do I get this person? What's deeper than getting this guy 6-pack abs that he's never had before? To me, that's surface goals, but I like to peel away the layers and get deeper. Like, why does this guy want to be ripped? What was he never ripped before? What's inspiring him to get ripped? I honestly, I used to bodybuild. I don't get inspired to get ripped. I don't know. It doesn't like light me on fire. I'm lit on fire by other, traits of strength. It's weird, maybe.
No, I've kind of evolved through what really, from like a training standpoint, what drives me. Like right now, I've really been pursuing the kind of bodybuilder lifestyle, physique stuff. Now, it used to be pursuing the highest level of strength possible. And I had a severe nerve injury in 2020 where I hit a point where I kind of accepted the fact that, okay, I'm probably not going to surpass my prime from a strength standpoint, but I needed something to pursue at a high level, an extreme level. And that to me was the bodybuilder lifestyle. And it's not even so much to me about the end result of looking shredded. It's about the journey, the suffering, the routine. Just like those nitty gritty final weeks where you're starving and you got to get your steps in, you're training low calorie, and you just that kind of monk lifestyle of just pushing yourself 24/7. I just fucking love that. Which
I think that's right there what you could really write about. And I remember when I competed in bodybuilding, when it was over, I was like, "You're empty." You're like, "Now what?" I got my lower back is striated, my quads are striated. And you're right. You're like, "All right, that's this end thing," but it was this journey. And yeah, you're like a Shaolin monk of strength training. And obviously what you did is like, you just did this. Okay, it was football and it was strongman. Now you need this next move into something challenging. And I think there's a lot of people out there that have never experienced that just like a complete immersion, which has a spiritual, it's like transforms you on a deeper level. And training, for some people, they think they want the six pack abs, then they start falling in love with that journey. And so I think that would be something unique to write about. I mean, I think if you talk about it, it would be because it doesn't have this like concrete thing. Like, hey, I'm going to get your deadlift up. I'm going to get you to lose. You're going to go from 20% body fat to 10%. It's like this. But when you start talking about the spiritual and the journey, it's just it's a flow. And I think it happens through conversations or through writing. But my concern is, okay, if John Heck starts writing, who's reading? Do people read? For example, if you post on Instagram a video, or let's say just a photo, right? I see your before and after photos. Do people read what you wrote? I don't know what the percent is. And then that could get you to start questioning, should I even write? And then you start questioning more. And so I think you got to come back to always, there's got to be something that's, at least for me, will this work inspire my son and my, future kids, if you decide to have more kids? Will this inspire them when they read about it and come across it? Because I wrote a book, not so much because I'm like, oh, I'm going to make all this money, but I thought about The Way to Live was from 1908. And I remember saying to Elliot Hulse, I go, Elliot, what's going to happen one day to all our YouTube videos? We have thousands of videos. I go, what if YouTube just like, I don't know, it just disappears one day? He's like, I don't know. I said, see, that's why you got to write a book. Because books, at least now, we're still buying books from Amazon or eBay or Abe Books, or people, I don't even know how they do it. They just photocopy every dang page of a book and it goes into these, I don't know, burner websites where you get stuff for free. But I still think I love getting lost in a great book.
200 years from now, some archaeologist is going to uncover the Encyclopedia of Underground Strength. Your word will remain etched into the world. So I think it's a great point. Now, Coach, I feel like we could just keep going down a rabbit hole for another hour.
Whatever you want. I'm sorry.
No, please. That was fantastic. I thought that was great.
This is going way down rabbit holes. It gets creative.
That's why I brought you on. This podcast is meant to go down every rabbit hole we can fall into. I would love to transition into just picking your brain a bit on, well, you kind of segued us with the YouTube stuff because you were, I mean, I use that term OG. You were kind of one of the OGs in I don't know, fitness YouTube, so to speak, strength YouTube, that genre. So I'd love to talk about YouTube and gym ownership a little bit.
Guys, thank you for tuning in and supporting the podcast. I just wanted to take a minute to give a shout out over to my guys at Troponin Supplements. So they're the sponsor of the podcast, and in my opinion, they carry the best supplements on the market, and it's not even close. And they're the one company that I've wanted to align myself with. As a nutrition coach working with NFL football players, other professional athletes, strongman competitors, bodybuilders, powerlifters, fitness enthusiasts, endurance athletes, I have to be very particular about any supplement company I endorse. And with Troponin Supplements, frankly, it was a no-brainer. These are the products I've been using myself for the last few years before I ever became involved with the company. I know the owner personally, Justin Harris. He is one of the brilliant minds in the bodybuilding industry, and we've talked, and all he has wanted to do is just bring some of the elite top-of-the-line products to the market, and that's what he's done. So these are the products I recommend and endorse to all my athletes, all my clients. I use myself, and I want to pass this along to you guys as well. So I'm going to highlight a couple products here. First and foremost, we've got the ATP. This is a high dose of caffeine paired with a very powerful nootropic. I take this before work. I take this before I podcast. This is going to give you a great boost in mood, in focus, memory enhancement. You're just going to feel like you took the Limitless pill when you use ATP. It's an effervescent tablet. You drop it in your water, it dissolves, tastes great. The next product, Field Rations. This is the premier intra-workout supplement on the market right now. It's a one-stop shop for all your intra-workout needs. It's based in highly branched cyclic dextrin, contains essential amino acids, electrolytes, tastes amazing. I use this within every training session. Then we've got the Suppressor Max. This is awesome for controlling your blood sugar. It's got a high dose of berberine, but then has complementary ingredients that are going to keep the berberine bioavailable and stay in your system longer. This is the best blood sugar product on the market. If you're bulking, if you're eating a ton of food, if you're using a cheat meal, this is a great product for you. And then finally, I love this one. I've always had sleep issues. Hit the rack. This is one of the best sleep products I've ever tried. I use it about 30 minutes before bed most nights, and this has been the one supplement that has actually helped me fall asleep and stay asleep. And then of course, we got the Troponin T logo bodybuilding jersey and the hat. We've got great apparel on the site. So guys, check out Troponin supplements. You can find the link in the show notes, in the bio, or you can simply just Google Troponin supplements. Use code HECK, capital HECK, at checkout for a discount. Check them out, guys. These are some of the best products on the market.
All right, so getting into the gym ownership and YouTube, I mentioned I just had Alan Thrall and Brian Alsruh on here, who both gym owners, both big-time YouTubers, also both guys who cited you as an influence. So when you got started, when you opened your gym, that was what, 2002 was when Underground Strength Gym was
started that from my parents' backyard in '02, garage, backyard, and like local playgrounds. 2003, we bought a house that needed to be gutted. But I remember like when we would shop for houses, anytime it was a one-car garage, I'd be like, I don't really like it. Tell my wife,
right.
We'd find a house with a 2-car garage. And I remember I didn't tell her, but on my mind, I was like, this is where I'm going to be training people. And so '03 was the first house we bought. '07, I started renting a warehouse. And those early years was so much concern of, I would be on Yahoo and in these like business forums and people talking about running a brick and mortar business from your house is illegal and you could get sued. And there was all this like legal and kind of injury type stuff running through my head and just being worried. And so it was scary times. And I remember really wrestling with, am I going to open a gym? And I had been online since '02, '03. And in the winter of 2007, I was in Florida. My daughter was like 11 months old, and we're visiting my friend Ryan Lee. But we were just down there on a vacation, and Ryan Lee was my mentor in business. And his initial kind of idea was, hey, personal trainers, there wasn't the strength coach even term wasn't even being thrown around much, but it was common for personal trainers to work like a 6 a.m. until 10, 11 a.m., then have this little midday break, and then you're training people until 9 p.m. And he's like, it's just a recipe for burnout. So he shared an idea of why don't you coach people for 4 hours and then spend 4 hours on your online business, and you have more flexibility. You could generate more income. You could impact more people. You could make money while you're sleeping versus trading time for dollars. So that's how I started. I immediately took what we did in person and started writing articles online. But when I was at Ryan's house visiting him for a dinner, it would have been like the Easter time. So it was like April. And he said, hey, what are you going to do? You going to start a gym? Or are you going to go all in on the online business? And I was like, I don't know if I could even figure out online. It was very kind of weird, in my opinion, what was being who was winning online. And I felt like, I don't really fit into the online space. Like, I'm not this guy teaching people how to train at home with like minimal equipment. I'm like, I train at home, but I'm using thick bars and kegs and stones and sandbags. And I was like, that's who I am. That's what I do. He's like, listen, man, I think God put you on this earth to make people strong. And when he said that, I was like, man, I'm going to fucking own a gym. I'm going to fucking make people strong. And also, John, when I came up in this, there was a lot of like the popular internet guys. They kind of like held this like space amongst everybody. And I don't want to mention names. Some of them are not with us anymore. And they're like, that guy's an idiot. Okay, he's stupid. And my training influence was like old school golden era bodybuilding. It was Dr. Ken strongman training. It was powerlifting because Elite FTS was filled with articles. It was West Side Barbell. And so I blended all of that together. It was like talking about like a monk. It was the bodyweight training that the Shaolin warrior monks did, all these old martial arts. And that didn't really fit me into a category of, hey, he teaches people conjugate. Oh, hey, he teaches people, you name it. He's a speed and agility guy. I was none of that. I was like, I remember when someone was like, what do you do? I was like, dude, I built bad motherfuckers. That's what I do. And I was like, how do you put that on the internet? You just don't, at least back then. And so when he said that to me, it was like the universe lined things up. I had been writing articles for a few years for Elite FTS. Dave Tate calls me and says, listen, we had an order that was placed, and in transit, it's getting returned. A guy ordered our 2x2 rack, comes with the dip bars, the box. He's like, but the guy had a stroke. And he said, this has to go back. I'll never lift weights. I'm not going to be able to lift weights. He's like, we don't have room in our warehouse. He's like, I need to send it to you. I go, and I was training people out of my garage. I go, I don't have room for another squat rack. He goes, I don't fucking care. He's like, every time I'm on the phone with you, he's like, you don't talk about owning the gym, but all you talk about is training people. He's like, you're going to own a gym in 6 months. I guarantee it. Store it in your father's garage. He's like, you can figure it out. I'm sending it to you. I was like, okay. 6 weeks. I think that conversation just spurred things on. 6 weeks later, I'm signing a lease. There was a gym in town that I grew up training in. Next to that gym was a small garage. And what happened was that gym was known as being quote unquote hardcore. But in the late 90s, early 2000s, hardcore started dying, John. And things like Men's Fitness magazine came out. And there was it used to be you're a bodybuilder or you're a powerlifter. Then the fitness category came out. I was like, what the fuck is this fitness? These guys are like, they're not strong. They're not jacked. What is this? This is fitness. So a gym,
pretty boy era.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. A gym opens up a quarter mile up the street, and it's this new age gym where they have classes and spin and this and that. Well, this other gym was just an open gym, bodybuilding, powerlifting, period, end of story. So he rents out that garage and starts doing martial arts classes, body pump, this, that. It doesn't work. Why? Because they're not being true to who they are. So they nix the gym. That gym is now like an underground gambling. Still. So when I go to the gym all the time to get a protein shake, he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I got this gym. I'm training people out of my garage. He's like, I got a garage. And he's like, let me just show it to you. You know, I was like, dude, I've been thinking about renting a space. I open it up. The windows are tinted. There's poker tables everywhere. And it wasn't big. It was a perfectly square 1,600 square feet, but it looked huge compared to my house, 2-car garage. It had a beam running down the middle. And I was like, man, I could hang pull-up bars and climbing ropes. And it made me think. So I said, let me get back to you on this. But as soon as I left, I was like, that's it. I'm going to turn it up. The rent was going to be $1,500 a month. I was like, I'm going to build my garage business to $3,000 a month. And then I'm going to say yes. And 6 weeks later, I signed the lease. We're in that garage. I'm also teaching phys ed full time. So I would teach. I would write in the morning, teach by day, drive to my gym, coach for 3 or 4 hours, train at night, go home. And it was actually not odd for me to fucking drink coffee at 9 p.m. at night and start writing on my blog more. I don't even think it's called blogging, but I could not stop writing and talking about it. And when YouTube came out, that was 2006 for me. I don't know when it started, but I had posted a clip of us training at like the park. And I called this guy, Dan, and I go, dude, there's this website called YouTube. 16 people have watched my video. I tell, like, it's amazing. And I started just posting anything we were doing. And the video quality is so bad, John. Like, it looks like I filmed it with a calculator. Because back then, you had a digital camera, plug it into your phone, upload it. or I had a flip cam. So unfortunately, the quality is very low. But what I started doing was by '07 or '08, after meeting with Gary Vaynerchuk, I told him I feel like I said, listen, I don't fit into this fitness industry. I'm in like the strength industry. I want to get people strong. And I said, what really gets me fired up, I said, I like to get on video and speak to people and share what we're doing. He's like, all right, make a video every day for the next 6 months, Monday through Friday. So I would make 7 to 10 videos a week. I would post twice a day. I would on the weekend go and film a bunch of stuff and stockpile videos and release a new video every day. And what took it off was I called it the Underground Strength Show. And I did like 130 of them. And it would just be behind the scenes at my gym, weighted pull-up competition, or, random guy drops off dinosaur training at my gym. Like I had all these, I was just sharing the experiences, and really I was being me. And when I started just being me versus wondering, what's this person doing? What's that? I started gaining more traction. And I think today, and you and I had this conversation at Sornex, like today, what really attracts attention is, are you training with your shirt off? Are you ripped? Or are you squatting 1,000 pounds? And so what's tough for me is like, I'm none of that, but I could get you strong. So I'm meeting kind of all the men in the middle, and I'm trying to give athletes very practical advice. That's maybe not so much working today. A lot of people want this kind of extreme something. But the only way I know how to do stuff is like, I'm just going to stay true to myself. And I got to tell you, like our buddy Joe Ken House. I mean, if you want somebody to tell you when you're full of shit, that's the guy. He will tell you.
He's told me.
Oh God. Oh, by the way, I met him in person in 2009. He came and trained at the Underground when they were playing against Rutgers. My gym was 10 minutes away. He trained. All of his interns had to train with us. Yeah. That was the house rules. There's old footage of that, John. It's called like Louisville Invades the Underground or something. Yeah. They were doing like prowler, battle rope, stuff that they were very new to doing. And Joe and I had, quote unquote, met through Elite FTS because he was writing for Elite FTS. He was named like 62 or Coach 62 on Elite FTS because of NCAA had so many compliance regulations for everybody. But I remember he was very tough on the interns. You know who his interns are? It's like Joe Connolly, who's at Arizona. Yeah. Adam Fight, who's a professor at Springfield and running his own gym. Brian Dermody, I don't think he's coaching anymore, but he went to Iowa. I believe he's like a pastor now. Pastor. And he was tough as nails on them, but we had so much fun. That was 16 years ago, 2009.
Yeah, no, trust me. I had some baptism by fire moments interning for Joe Ken, but it was huge for me. I'm so thankful for how hard he was on me when I interned for him, because that accelerated my growth tremendously. And I've been in places where I didn't feel like I was pushed and really held to a high standard by my boss. And I missed that because Joe Ken held me to a very high standard. And I went into work every day, not walking on eggshells, not the term, but I knew I had to go in there and be on and be on point and be getting better. And that was big for me. But let me ask you this with the YouTube. So you're cranking out all these YouTube videos. What was the intent initially? Was the intent kind of drive eyes to the gym? Was it purely your creative outlet, just your way of sharing your training knowledge to the world? What was the intent with the?
It was a little bit of everything. It wasn't ultra focused. By us sharing, I would also, the intent would change according to feedback I would get. Commenting on YouTube wasn't a big thing back then, but people would email me and tell me what they thought. So I was getting a lot of emails about people who hated their job as an accountant or a lawyer, and they'd be like, I'm gonna freaking open up a gym and we're gonna flip tires. I remember a voicemail at my gym. Some guy was from Canada, and I think he was an accountant. He's like, fuck this suit and tie. He's like, I'm gonna fucking open up a gym and we're gonna flip tires and train with chains. And it was interesting that people who felt they took a money job were like, I got to get out of these chains and I got to unleash. And so I was getting some people that maybe shouldn't have been jumping into the strength and conditioning world. I mean, it was so extreme, John, that people were like, I got this. I'm a fireman, or I'm a teacher, or I work in this industry, and it was quote unquote safe and good for family. And they're like, I'm fucking quitting everything. I never did that. I taught and had a salary, full-time job and all that stuff. Then I had the gym and the online. And what's interesting about the gym videos is people locally were not finding out as much about it as people globally. And Alan Cosgrove was like, dude, you got to focus on being 5 Mile famous.
Yeah.
To build your gym. But nobody from a gym standpoint was sharing those videos. And so we were starting to attract some very hungry, diehard people. So for example, today we do a trial. It's a free introductory workout. It's an assessment. Back then it was a try out, like what I heard about Ken Shamrock from the early UFC and Pride days. He had the Lions Den, and you did a try out. And it was like,
remember.
Yeah, you had to fight all these guys. You had to do 500 Hindu squats. You had to like go through hell. So if you quit, you knew that you'd never get invited. And I think you'd never get invited back. And what was great, John, is when you have a full-time job, you don't need the money. So I did not have my back against the wall. Back then, you're not like counting members and tracking revenue all crazy. It was like, hey, man, my online business easily covers the rent, and I'm training people because my mission is to build bad motherfuckers. If you don't want to be here, I mean, it was very intense. I was so crazy. I mean, I've kicked people out of my gym. I've kicked my own kids out of the gym when they're not listening, they're screwing around. But I remember like kids giving up. We'd be like, get the fuck up, get back up. Or they'd run to the fence. We'd be like, throw up in, there was like a hole. Like,
Yeah.
throw up through the hole. And then they're like, we'd be like, get the fuck back in. And everybody was like, cursing at them. And there was a much tougher group. And what's interesting now is you see athletes it's like they don't want to get coached as much because there's so much coaching through travel sports that they're like, I just want to go to a gym, play my own music, do my own workout. And so the type of kids we get is very different today than 2007 through. I always say when the iPhone became popular, we started attracting a weaker kind of athlete. It's very weird.
That's interesting. And that's something that I wanted to get to. And I think it's a good segue right now. Just, we're in this NIL transfer portal era in the world of college sports. And, to be honest, that was a contributing factor to pushing me away from football strength and conditioning and there were a lot of aspects to it. And part of it is just, I loved what I was stepping into here on the private side of things. But one of the things I loved about college football strength and conditioning was, you get the freshman in and you got 3-4 years to train that kid and to see a mentor to him, watch him develop and grow. And, the kid works his ass off from being the red shirt, riding the bench to earning a starting spot. And now it's not like that anymore. I mean, now you might have a kid for 6 months and then he's transferring out of there. The second a kid gets a taste of success, and then he's hitting the market and just playing the field for who's got the biggest payday for him to leave. And the second a kid's not a starter, they're not going to compete for a job. They're not going to stick around for 2 years fighting. They're going to go transfer to where they can be promised the starting spot. And I felt like we didn't get to keep kids around and train them and develop them. It was just like NFL free agency with no parameters just became this revolving door. And it just was so different from me. So are you seeing that, in the kids that you're training at your gym? Are you seeing, what are your thoughts on all that?
Well, I don't know if I had seen you talk about it either on your podcast or on an Instagram video.
Joe Ken and I did a live stream.
Yes, I think I reposted that about, and Joe Ken also had shared this with me. I remember we ate at the diner and him and Adam Fight and Jill said, yeah, when we get the incoming freshmen, they do this, I think it was like a 6-week body weight only, unilateral only. He's like, we do 1-arm push-ups on the wall. We do Bulgarian split squats. We do all these isometric holds. And I remember you saying you don't feel like you're coaching people anymore. And Joe brought up something saying, and I picked this up just from seeing Sornex's machine line. He said, listen, now you're getting athletes transferring every semester. It started as they're going to transfer every year. He's like, and so I'm not teaching them how to lift anymore. And he's like, and I said, I told him, I go, it's only a matter of time before a player has in their NIL contract, I don't put a bar on my back. Or John Heck is not my strength coach. My strength coach is John Smith from whatever, Smithville, Alabama. Like, he'll send me the workouts and I do my own thing. And I was like, man, we now see that in high school, kids will transfer out of a public school and go to a private school. So now and what's interesting in New Jersey is we still compete at the same state level. And I go, man, like, I'm working with kids who can't do 10 push-ups on a wrestling team. And that wrestling team gets a freshman who's ranked top 10 in country, or it's a 17-year-old competing in Russia on a world level when I got a 17-year-old who can't squat 135. And so that makes things different as far as like how to train. And also, I felt like this past year, I never seen so much inconsistency in training, not just at my high school, but at the underground. At the underground, I have 2 membership models, 3 months or 12 months. They both roll into monthly. We used to get a ton of 12 months. I'm training in season. I'm in it now. As soon as the in season comes, most people quit because they are training at school. Then they go to the club sport. Then they do a private. And I've said, my quote is, never have I seen kids do so much stuff yet achieve so little in return. So, John, our athletes today are not as successful as they were 12 years ago. Yet as a strength coach, I'm a gazillion times smarter, but they don't train enough. And, the nutrition you encourage and espouse is the complete opposite of what athletes do, because they don't eat home cooked meals. They eat on the road. Like, I don't know what's a convenience store in North Carolina, but in New Jersey, there's Wawa.
Wawa, yeah.
Okay, so they eat at Wawa. Breakfast is usually something from Costco in a bag that goes in the microwave, or it's a Starbucks coffee. And so back in the day, I'd have kids, they were drinking milk while training, or a kid would ride his bike. I'd say, hey, don't tell me you have no food. Ride your bike to 7-Eleven, get a carton of eggs. It's 99 cents. Today, a carton of eggs is $8. So we're seeing a lot of money thrown in sport, but I still think like the elite are going to be elite, and we've erased the middle, the developmental area. Kind of like middle class is getting erased.
Coach, is crazy. So, I work with a lot of different people in my online coaching business. 70% of them are nutrition, about 30% of them I do training for, but I've got a number of high school athletes who came to me this year for nutrition coaching. And it was such a shock to me. So, and my point of contact with the high school kids was often the father, and they're sharing with me kind of their weekly structure, their year. And I mean, I'm dealing with a high school offensive lineman as a sophomore. He's got like 8 different private coaches. He's got his O-line skills coach. He's got his mobility body work guy. He's got, and then like his training at the school was like an afterthought almost. Yeah. Then he's got me for nutrition, and he's traveling around. He's doing a million different things. And then the dad's talking about, oh, we're considering him transferring high schools. He's in Florida, and there's no parameters. Like, I didn't even realize you can just transfer to any school you want, or any. Yes. Yeah, you can transfer to any high school you want in Florida. So they're talking about, oh, we're gonna move our son into an apartment.
Yes.
3 hours away so he can go to the big private school. And they're asking my opinion on that. I'm like, guys, I mean, just settle down here. Like, let the kid be a kid, have a high school experience, buy into the the strength and conditioning at his high school, be a good teammate, work your ass off there. I mean, all the determining factor for you go next level is not going to be how many different specialists, mobility guys, body work people are you working with. It's if you've got the talent and you can just develop within one system. I mean, you're going to have so much more success. But it was mind blowing to me seeing what these high school kids are doing now.
What was like, you grew up, your dad played in the NFL and he's a current coach in the NFL, correct? Still
Correct.
coach?
He's the offensive line coach for the Kansas City Chiefs.
You guys probably know Will Fries. He's a lineman from New Jersey. I think he's with the Vikings. He shared his dad's schedule with him. It was very simple. What was your schedule like with your dad? Was it like what these kids are doing?
No, not at all. No, he would have ruled. I mean, he would have never allowed any of this. He wanted. So I went to a good high school in Florida. We won state 3 out of my 4 years, and man, we get our ass.
I thought you grew up in the Carolinas. I didn't realize you grew up in Florida.
No, I moved to Carolina to play ball at UNC. Prior to that, I lived in Jacksonville, Florida. So I played at a prestigious high school called Bowles. We won. We had a legendary head coach, Corky Rogers. He was the winningest coach in Florida history, and we won state 3 out of my 4 years. And but no, we had a rigorous 10-week summer strength and conditioning program at the school. Who ran? I was
the football coach, or you guys had a strength coach?
It was our defensive coordinator who was our strength coach there, and he was pretty good. We had a solid strength program, and I mean at camp we did 3-a-days for a week, then we did 2-a-days for a week. But I didn't see a single specialist. It was all about just being part of the team. And I will say this about my dad. He was a dad first and a coach second to me. I think a lot of these dads kind of live vicariously through their son and they want to be the hard ass, super involved coach. My dad was never that. It's because he played 12 years in the league. He was an NFL coach. He didn't need to live vicariously through me. So he was always a very positive, constructive criticism for me. He'd watch all my game film when I was playing college ball and give me feedback at a tasteful time, but he was never an overbearing coach dad. He wanted my high school coaches to really kind of lead the way. And unfortunately I had good coaching there, but no, it was just a very standard traditional experience for me. I trained with the team and my high school team, and that was about it.
A lot of times they try to get, or I always encourage linemen to wrestle. No, nothing against the specialist places for linemen. I see that up, but I'm always like, man, these guys are just hitting pads. I'm like, if you would just wrestle, you could hand fight with your eyes.
Right.
Did your father, what did he encourage outside football?
I played basketball and I threw discus.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I 100% agree with you on wrestling. I think if you're a lineman, wrestling is an invaluable sport to play. And I mean, not only from a leverage kind of grappling perspective, but also just from the mentality right, of wrestling. But I did wrestle. I played basketball, which was tremendous for me developing my athleticism. I was a late bloomer. I was the tall, skinny, awkward kid. I had to learn how to change directions and move on my feet. So,
which is perfect. That basketball is perfect. You're 6'8".
Exactly.
How tall are you, John?
6'7".
6'7". Man, that must have been great. And that's what I say is like, oh, somebody lacks athleticism. Let's expose them to more sports rather than sitting in a car. Then I go to this hyper specialized program, but that's what makes money. That's a big money thing. And so I've seen my son playing baseball. We've experienced the injuries, and I always said, hey, you know what happened? You stopped training at the underground. You did too much baseball. And I've been at baseball games and watched injuries. So I've watched kids tear UCLs. I once saw a kid break his elbow pitching. It rarely happens to an athlete that looks physically prepared. It tends to happen to an athlete where if I look at them and just assess from an eyeball standpoint, they look like they can't do one pull-up.
Yeah.
They look like they can't do 10 push-ups. I texted yesterday Andrea Hootie. She's the strength coach at UConn women's basketball. She's been around strength and conditioning for decades. And I think she just did her PhD. I can't remember if it was in like exercise science, but she studied women's basketball. And I said, you know, what's crazy is I've never seen so many torn ACLs for girls, and nobody's like, we got to fix this. I trained a girl at my high school. She just tore an ACL 3 times. So one, then the other, and then the other one again. And I was just waiting for somebody to say, this model is broken. We must fix it. And we don't see that. People are just like, nope, keep going and destroying bodies of kids. It's kind of heartbreaking. It's very hard.
And honestly, like and from a mental standpoint, they're going to be so burnt out. So, I mean, I'm going to use this and I'm going to use this another kid as an example. You know, first of all, they're not playing multiple sports. They're specializing in their sport of choice year round. And I had this kid, he's a junior in high school. He's got multiple offers, talented lineman. And his dad's sending me footage. He's going over to, are you familiar with LaCharles Bentley?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he went over to LaCharles Bentley's place doing, you know, specialized training. And he's talking to me like, oh, yeah, you know, they're working out this deal where LaCharles is going to train him for free, but then he gets first dibs on him to be his agent when he goes into the draft. I'm like, the draft? I'm like, you're a junior in high school. You haven't even set foot on
that's NFL teamwork right there.
You haven't even committed to a school yet. Like, let's pump the brakes here. I mean, everyone is just so, no one's focused on the here and now and developing now. They're so worried about, you know, the future. It's like they're just skipping past the development stage. They want to go right to the big payoff.
They're not.
It's frustrating to me.
I don't see athletes showing up. I always say they're not as physically prepared as they once were. Jim Wendler said something great, but people probably glaze over it because it's simple. He said, what special program do you need if you can't do 50 push-ups and run a mile? He's like, I don't care if you're a lineman. He's like, you're a teenager. You should be able to run a mile. And Jim said his high school is small. He said, so most kids will play multiple sports. But he said, our linemen are not big guys, but they're powerful, they're athletic, they're fast. And a bigger guy is not always stronger, which I'm sure you've seen.
Mm-hmm.
I remember training the last big guy we trained who was like his bench was 135 for 5. Horrific. That's horrific. But they keep saying, get bigger, eat more. But if you train the wrong way, and I also look at certain strength exercises, we can't really measure them, meaning when I was training athletes with sandbags and stones, I can't say, John, you lifted the 100-pound stone. Go to the 110. It's not like measuring your barbell numbers. And so, but by lifting those odd objects, they developed a very unique type of strength that had a transfer to their sport and also different mobility, like squatting down and leaning to the side as I'm picking stuff up. And I don't know if we're ever going to go back to building the overall athlete. And so I know it kind of like went all over the place with the YouTube question, but I used YouTube to grow online and brick and mortar. Right. I still do. From a business standpoint, even though SEO is not a big thing, when you're growing a local brick and mortar business, you should use SEO, like Manasquan Strength and Conditioning, Manasquan Speed and Agility. I want our videos popping up first. And from also a business standpoint, John, you know, we had this like price range where I didn't increase prices for a long time. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, I was like, man, we're getting kids coming from other gyms. They're spending 6 months to a year at another gym and they don't even know how to dumbbell bench, or they don't even know how to pick up a weight with a flat back. And I said, and they charge more than us. So I said, I'm going to bump our prices up because I think people don't respect what we do. And sometimes a little transparency that I like to share, I think it's important for coaches to hear this, is your gym name is important. Sometimes I feel like Underground Strength Gym makes people have a wrong connotation of what we do. Like it's just no science. You know, oh, that's just strength. I'm going to this other place. I do all speed and agility. And so when a father reaches out to me, as a father reaches out to you, they probably ask stuff where you're like, that's like not really the thing I would focus on. But what does a dad reach out to me? He's like, hey, my son, John, needs a lot of core strength and speed and agility. Like, what does core strength even mean? And even sport coaches say those words. And so people are kind of sucked into the buzzword world. They don't know or understand, the development of an athlete. And so we have to even change our language when speaking to the consumer,
Right.
because they don't understand really what we're talking about. We have to speak their language. Then, all this fancy talk, then the kid comes in and they do, a set of squat, our warm up first day. I want to watch you push a sled. I'm going to just look at your feet and ankles. I already assess you by your posture from the moment you walk in. Then I do a sled, and then I do squat, lunge, push up, recline row. On squats, I'm looking at feet, ankles, hips. The kid whose dad wants all this fancy shit can't even do a good bodyweight squat.
I don't understand, Coach. You're not getting them on the force plate and the Nord board and the FMS screening the second you get the kids in.
I'll say this, John. I'm like, am I supposed to do that? And I like to share my doubts with people listening, because I've been coaching since 95, and I want them to know that even when you're doing it for a long time, the outside noise could like trick you. And so, yeah, we have a jump mat. I have timing gates here. We're probably going to order the OVR timing gates. You want to do those things because the athlete, they trust this more than they trust Zach Even-Esh and John Heck. They trust what's on a computer. So, you can say, hey, man, that bench was slow. You're grinding. It felt easy. Listen, I want to take 10 pounds off each side. No. All right. But then if you put on like a VBT device, you could say, listen, for us to work on your speed, I need to be around 0.50 meters per second with you. Then you attach it to the OVR and they're like 0.85, 0.95, 1.15. I'm like, I told you, it's too slow. I could see it with my eyes. It's the coach's eye. But the consumer doesn't really respect or believe in that. And so gyms are being built now for athletes. And I think you need like a massive bank loan for all the technology and all the fancy equipment. But that's not what builds people. That's kind of why I was asking. I was like, what did you lift with your dad? I wonder, did your dad set up a garage gym for you and your brother?
He would take us to a local Gold's Gym and train with us. So he trained under Al Vermeil.
Oh, I know
his.
Yeah. I love that guy. Wow.
Yep. So when my dad played for the Chicago Bears, he would train with Al Vermeil in the offseason. So he would take my brother and I to a Gold's Gym and put us through Al Vermeil style workouts.
Athletic beast, right?
Yeah. So that was some of our early exposures to lifting. And then, I started, I would lift at, it was called Breakfast Club. I started in 7th grade at my middle school, and the basketball coach ran it. It'd be before class started, and it was a group of like 15 of us. We'd go in and we'd lift weights, and man, I just got bit by the iron bug and just completely fell in love with it from then on. But yeah, no, it was just all basic traditional stuff. And I've been kind of outspoken on some of my negative feelings on some of the sports science. And all that stuff has merit. It does. The VBT, the force plates, the Nord board, the 1080 sprint, all those are tools that do have a place. It's just, you look at college football, and I keep coming back to college, but it's like this arms race of technology. And in order to compete on a recruiting level, these schools just have to be selling all the tech, right? And, I saw it in the NFL with my time with the Houston Texans. I felt like the pendulum had swung so far towards the data and the sports science that it was like paralysis through analysis. Decisions were made based on the data and the data alone. And House made the statement, they're taking the strength out of strength and conditioning.
I've heard
in NFL strength and conditioning, in college football, and there's no coach's eye anymore, right? It's all coming down to the data, and that's something that frustrated me as well. I'm curious, kind of a loaded big picture question. Do you think the team setting strength and conditioning coach is on its way to being phased out? Where do you see that profession headed?
I've asked these questions as I've done some stuff in the college sector or worked with or speaking at clinics. And so I'll hear coaches say, like yesterday when I went to Bucknell to enter the athletic building, a baseball player let me in. And of course, I'm asking him how his training's going. He's like, we usually have 3 scheduled lifts a day. He's like, but sometimes we go to this weight room and we're on our own. And same thing at Cornell. Like the kids told me, like I was at Cornell. Cornell has their own building with a hyperbaric chamber. They got their own, like dining area. It looked like a mini movie theater. And they told me that like sometimes we just work out right here in the back. Sometimes we meet our coach. So it seems like there's no, I don't want to say rigidity, but like, hey, let's suffer together as a team. There's a lot of that doesn't work for me. And I know I'm going to sound like a dick when I say this, John, but whenever I've trained an athlete who's too special to do squatting and cleaning and carries and jumps, almost always 9 out of 10, they lose to a stronger guy during the time that they need it. Nobody wants to be strong until they get out muscled. And even at the high school level, you know how many kids tell me, they're like, hey, I have a private trainer. It's speed and agility. Or I'll not see a kid for 4 years. Then at the end of their senior year, they bring me a sheet from their college strength coach. And I want to say, hey, bud, like I coached at the college level. I don't know why I wasn't able to coach you for 4 years. They don't want to listen to you because sometimes John Welborn calls it proximity bias. They're like, hey, where are you in Charlotte, John? Is that where you are? Raleigh?
Raleigh, North Carolina.
John Heck's from Raleigh. I'm from Raleigh. He can't be good. There's no way there's an expert in my town. I got to go to Charlotte. I got to go to this other place or this other thing. And so I've already seen I'm on my own program happening at the college sector. And I'm sure it's already happened. We maybe haven't heard it. Maybe you did, but a big football player is guaranteed to go into a program and say, I'm not doing that. I got, Zach Even-Esh sent me a training program. He's my, quote unquote special coach. And that also is impacting kids in the way of, it's not only are you missing out on the team aspect, but now you don't even want to be part of a team. You don't just want to beat the other team. You want to beat your own teammates. And it's really taken away. And if I take it even deeper, when your dad was taking you to Gold's Gym and I grew up a bit older than you, nobody had headphones on. And that was the beauty of being able to talk to other people or spot other people. And even just the safety perspective, what if I'm trying to coach you or something's going wrong? You can't hear me because when you train, you could only train to your playlist and to your favorite song. And before you hit this PR, it's got to be my song. And I got to tell you, I remember like a kid, we trained him a while back. They went to this, he was a wrestler. This town called Phillipsburg is known for like tough wrestling. He's like, I got to tell you, like, it's psyched me out so bad. I went there. He's like, they opened up newspapers out. He's like, there was a grandma front and she was like slamming her walker, telling me I'm going to lose. And I think to myself, yeah, see, this is why we can't always have your perfect environment, because when you go to another environment, I've seen this at the high school level, they're shouting obscenities about your girlfriend, your mom. They took pictures of your family from TikTok and they're holding it up. Like they're psyching you out. So if the weight room is always so perfect, how will you handle the true stress of like not just competition, but the crazy fans?
No, that's a great point. That's a really good point. And God, something about just I love like the branding, and you mentioned it kind of in the name of your gym, of just some of the terminology, the underground and warehouse gym. I don't like, to me, I love that. Like, I love that there's still a gym like you out there that just brands around just kind of that nitty gritty old school toughness. Hey, it's not all going to be bells, whistles, shiny perfection, but you're just going to come in here and learn how to grind.
We're going to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that works.
And unfortunately, that's something that is just being lost in this day and age.
Right. And I think Joe Ken says it maybe more eloquently than I do. He also has a lot more clout, his higher level of coaching. But his recent video, he said, listen, him and I have these conversations a lot. If I'm always looking at the computer, at this iPad, at how fast you're going, I said to Joe, I go, Joe, does that fast squat count if he didn't go down deep enough? Or that clean with his background? Nobody knows. They're looking at the iPad. They're not looking at the kid. Or even you listen, a lot of coaches can beat me on spreadsheets and understanding VBT and this and that. But I could watch somebody squat and say, hey, listen, put your feet an inch wider. Or before you squat, I notice your elbows are back here. I want you to pull them in, just try to go an inch. And I can pick up on these little details of coaching. Or listen, every time you're benching, I notice you're a little bit high. Get that down to your sternum. Or I noticed you didn't touch your shirt the first rep, but you did on the second, they did on the third. Let's slow it down, get more consistent. Nope. We're worried about VBT. And so I'm more of the world of, coaching and teaching. And I think that stuff's getting lost. And so I got to tell you, my favorite weight room to train in was the original one where they kind of interviewed me at Lehigh. It was like a 700 square foot weight room. The ceiling was a bit low. So when guys were doing these heavy dumbbell snatches, they were like an inch from the ceiling. They had these dumbbells that had like thicker handles on them. The stereo, there was no like perfect stereo. I remember like every 5 minutes I had to push the speakers back because the guys were dropping weights and the speakers were like coming off the table. But it was in this old, they had the old wrestling room that almost looked like a church with like cathedral ceilings, wooden beams, and then all these old black and white photos of all the all Americans from like the mid 1900s. I could literally hear their feet moving on the mat like the ghosts. And then you leave the weight room, you go down these like rickety stairs, like, and then you enter this weight room. And I was like, oh my God. And I remember the coach was like, hey, I just want to warn you, it's like a dungeon. And all I'm thinking to myself is like, that's perfect. Like, I love it. And that was
music
beautiful.
To my ears. Yeah.
It was great. And so when it gets too fancy, I think it encourages that fancier training. And so I'm definitely, I don't know what is the future of sports, where we don't see the transfers as much is the Ivy Leagues and the military, academies, West Point, Naval Academy. They're not dealing with that as much, but I had to, say to my daughter, listen, you're going to this school. It's a D1 school. It's not a big school. The kids are very much academic focused, but I said, the new norm is change. So I said, you must be ready if your coach decides to leave. And then she's like, well, her husband is the football coach. I go, yeah, but if a university offers him several million, she's going. And then you're going to have to decide, are you going with her? And so that's tough on kids, in my opinion, the constant change. And now it's a legit business. And if you are like a deep-blooded coach, you can't relate to, hey, man, I might recruit, all right, John Heck's a lineman, Zach Even-Esh is a lineman. Let's look at John Heck's Instagram. Oh, that shit is pumping. Zach Even-Esh Instagram, not pumping. Let's say I'm a better lineman. They might take you because you're technically more valuable because you've got more eyeballs. And so now the coach has to say, do we want a better lineman or do we want a guy that's bringing us more eyeballs? And they might say, listen, how do I keep my job? We need to increase our attendance. Nobody's coming to watch this guy. They're coming to watch that guy. And so if you're a purebred coach, I think a lot of coaches like that are going to be like, hey, man, I can't do this shit no more.
Yeah. I mean, I got phased out, and there's going to be more coming. Like there are going to be coaches who just don't want to sell out in that way. And I think there will be good coaches who, unfortunately, are going to leave that sector, even in spite of big paydays. And just touching on one last thing that you mentioned, so I worked for Daryl Bauer. I don't know if you know
Yes.
Bauer. He was the head strength coach at Troy right now. And he had a term I really like. So he would talk about the art and the science of coaching, and he called it the long sword and the short sword. And the metaphor he would use is the samurai would carry two swords. They'd have their long sword, which is for, defense, and they'd have their short sword, the kill sword, which is kind of the offensive. And he would make the analogy, your long sword, that's kind of your knowledge of the science, the X's and O's. And then the short sword, that's the art of coaching. That's the intangibles, the coach's eye, the ability to communicate, the ability to command respect, and just all those things you can't quantify on paper. And I think, to your point, I think that short sword, that art of coaching, is being lost in this new technology era. Like you said, that the coach isn't necessarily watching the athlete. They're watching the VBT device, they're watching the iPad, they're making decisions off of the numbers on the screen. They're losing touch with just being there on the floor, in it with the guys. And that's something that you were great at. It's something that I felt I was pretty good at. But now everything's just so data driven. Everything is so, like you said, it's, I don't know.
Where's to me, that if you have this passion for the purity of it, that pushes you out. I'll give you an example. We've got an intern with us right now. Great kid. Very scientific driven, but he doesn't know how to spot properly. He spots too early. He spots with one hand, but he can recite, Dr. So-and-so. To me, that's not good coaching. Forget great coaching. So now our job is to teach him that. But then the flip side is, does he even give a shit about that? He may not. His personality may be very into the science of it. When you mentioned Al Vermeil, I think I did 2 podcasts with him. It's been some of my favorites. I love how there's like this freedom to the training. He talks about running hills, talks about, just with weightlifting, like keeping the speed and the technique and the overall athleticism. I love that. But how many people even know who Al Vermeil is? So you got the business game there. And when you mentioned lineman training, I love looking at what Olin Kreutz is doing inside his gym. They're boxing, they're doing Muay Thai. They take the science of understanding positioning. But when you speak to Olin, he says one of the biggest problems linemen have is they're not strong enough, so they cannot execute the skill properly because they've gotten too big and they're just lacking all that relative body strength, which is why I've always loved, the art of coaching. Sometimes I forget to do it, but I love, now we call it contact prep. Well, I used to just have kids wrestle on the front lawn of the gym. Hand fight. Can you get behind him? I didn't know that was contact prep. We just called it wrestling. And I looked at it as, I'm going to take you out of a environment with a referee and a whistle, and you're going to be out on the grass. And that had a emotional impact on them, sometimes in a negative manner, where they realize, shit, I could only compete when everything's so perfect. I said, yes, that's why we want to train with sandbags and stones. That's why I want to train sometimes outside when it's cold or very hot, because sometimes your games, you're going to go somewhere and there's going to be a heat wave, or you're going to travel somewhere and it's cold AF. And I don't want your mind to take you down a road of like, oh, I've never done this before. I want you to say, oh, I've been in these weird situations. I could handle anything.
Yeah, just training to learn how to handle adversity is a big part of it. I mean, just being prepared to handle any sort of condition. And I love the contact prep stuff. Number one, it's hell of a conditioning modality. And like you said, it kind of has that visceral, emotional, competitive, chaotic component to it, which that's name of the game, playing on the line of scrimmage or playing any contact sport. Right. So no, I love that stuff. Well, Coach,
before I forget, you mentioned this with stuff when I watch 8th graders play football or 9th graders, because you may have done this with a brother, but even just like neighborhood wrestling, your friend roughhousing, dads will say to me, he's afraid to put his hands on somebody, but he's playing football. Why? He never wrestled. If I'm coaching football, I'm going to start you guys wrestling from your knees, wrestling side to side, arm wrestling. By the way, I taught kids, I had kids do arm wrestling. And you know how you grab, they did this, they like grabbed the kid's hand, like versus the arm. And I was like, whoa. So that's shit we did in second grade. So the inability to put your hands on somebody is also missing. But I'm sorry, go ahead. I know you got a last question and I don't want to go over your time.
No, I was just going to wrap it up, but I think that's a good point. That is a really good point. It's almost, God, I don't want to send us down another rabbit hole. I mean, this one might get us in trouble, but just sort of like this like era of like toxic masculinity where like young boys are just, they're being talked down to like being a man is just this toxic thing. And I think that bleeds into, like we used to roughhouse and go wrestle around, like you said, arm wrestle. And now that's kind of being stricken out of young boys. And
because we're always afraid to offend or hurt somebody.
Exactly.
At my high school, I'll warm up the athletes with what's like ultimate frisbee, but we use a medicine ball. And they get pretty physical with it. And one of the coaches was watching. I was like, dude, you know why these boys are going nuts out here? I was like, because they need it. They're sitting in a chair for 7 hours a day. Everything they do is so organized and controlled. And I also tell them, I go, listen, hey, man, somebody's going to bump into you in this game. Don't flip out and be a baby about it and get all crazy and start cursing. That's part of the game. I was like, you're not out here to hurt each other, but go ahead and let it rip. And they love it. And they're also outside in the sun. When you're at school, no windows. It's very prison-like. And so the kids go nuts from that. And then they overreact to the other stuff. We should do a quick closeout on that one question that I told you that Corey brought up about.
Yeah, please.
Let's like cap it in a few minutes. And I apologize for going over, but
no, please.
I told you that I saw Shelton Stevens reposted. Corey, I think, is in the NBA, or no, I don't know. I think he's with the Phoenix Suns for NBA, and he does a lot of innovative training, a lot of creative training, movement, not just get strong. And he said, hey, is a strength coach even needed? Which was kind of along your question of the team training. And so he said, what if sport coaches just implemented general physical preparation? And, there's two things there. Number one, the Soviets, and then, when Soviet became Russia and all the different, they were doing this before I was born. The sport coach would often get his or her PhD in a specific aspect of the sport. So, for example, the famous Greco-Roman Alexander Karelin, they called him the experiment. His PhD, I believe, or his master's degree was in the defense of the suplex. I think he got a PhD in law. But then I would hear about, like I have this is a great book, Soviet Training and Recovery Methods. All these older books, or Dr. Michael Yessie's book. It was called Secret of Soviet Sports Training, and then it became Volume 2, Secrets of Russian Fitness Training. But in a long story, the sport coaches were very knowledgeable about, they called it physical preparation. They understood how to implement what that athlete needed. And the reason why they could get a little bit down the general specific or sport specific was because those athletes were built up on a very general physical preparatory with multiple sports. And then they only moved them into a single sport when they were age appropriate. And they also put them in a sport according to their mindset. So John Heck is 6'7". If you're in Russia, there's no football there, but you're going to be a basketball player or volleyball. If you're shorter, 5'7", you might be a weightlifter. If you're getting into fights all the time, you will be on the boxing team and the wrestling team. They matched you accordingly. And so what Corey said, the flip side to it is, a lot of coaches think they know proper training. They don't understand at all physical preparation, how to implement sleds, how to implement carries and unilateral training. Hey, you could put up a program on a whiteboard, and so could Billy Smith, who's a random football or basketball or lacrosse coach, but the way you teach it, clean and deadlift and bench, is perfect. The sport coaches here are still telling us to do advanced stuff, yet their kids can't do a push-up. And so that's why, to Corey's question, we need educated strength coaches, but it would be actually better if the sport coach knew how to do proper strength training.
Right.
But the reality is, and no offense to those that do know how, I've seen many sport coaches try to run a weight room, and it's scary. There's no control. There's no proper warm-up. The technique is horrific. There's no progression and regression. Everybody's on this. You do it, you figure it out on your own, which there's a lot of benefit to some figuring it out on your own. But would that be a better model? Yes. And James Thinker Smith told me 10, 15 years ago, he said, Zach, if you really wanted to impact athletes, he's like, I think you need to open a wrestling club, teach wrestling, and also be the strength coach. He said, otherwise, and this is so long ago, he's like, otherwise, it's what you were saying, John. I'm going to high school football. I got a guy teaching me O-line skills. I got this guy doing mobility for me. This guy's, teaching me how to talk on Instagram, like just 7 coaches. Whereas what was the power of the one coach under one roof? You were developing people, which is exactly why you left college, because you said, I'm not developing anymore. I'm not even coaching anymore. And that's where America is. America is still backwards. So people could say, hey, Soviet Union, drugs, blah, blah, blah. The reality is that Eastern European model, that Soviet model, was the best and still is the best for developing youth, drugs or not. They understood the true physical preparation model. Louis Simmons shares it a lot.
Right. And I mean, to your point, I agree. Like, I think on paper, theoretically, it would be perfect if the sport coach could be fully competent when it came to just the training, the general development, the GPP work, the weight room, the field, all of that. But like, it's never going to happen. I mean, we talk about specialization among athletes. Well, it's the same with coaches. I mean, all these coaches are specialized too. And, even if you have a sport coach running the weight room, running the strength program, I mean, it's not like they have not spent their life obsessing over training. They're not passionate about training. So they're never going to apply that level of conscientiousness and organization and be thorough like that when it comes to the weight room training. Because I mean, they're running the weight room, but in the back of their mind, they're thinking about the playbook and watching film and the recruiting and all that. So no, it's an interesting point, and James the Thinker Smith, I mean, what a brilliant mind, such a unique guy. I've listened,
and he left the strength and conditioning industry. I think it was like corporate elite guys.
I've got his book on my shelf, one of his books. But yeah, he would talk about like how he would have a conversation with the sport coach, kind of calling out their kind of archaic, ineffective practices and how things could be so much better. And the sport coach would basically say like, I agree with everything that you're saying, but I just can't do it. Like we can't change in that way. Cause I mean, just being stuck in the ways how we've always done it is such a kind of epidemic.
And good for him for saying, you know what? I'm not going to keep kind of trading my life for this job is safe. Fuck it. I'll bite the bullet. And he said, I'll just create my own world, which, I don't know if he has kids or anything like that, but when you don't have your back against the wall in any manner, you have those things to do. That's why I recommend everybody out there, even if you're a college coach, you need to have some aspect of your own business online, something, so that you're never like, oh, forget it. I'll just say whatever this guy tells me to do because I got to pay the electric bill. You don't want that. It'll eat your soul alive. I've been there before.
Yep. And that's why I had my coaching business operating in the background online for 8 years. And then when I was ready to go, I was able to, boom, step right out, right into it, go full time with it. And I haven't looked back since.
Very
But I'll tell you what I'm going to be doing here soon is planning my own little sabbatical out to the woods, getting an Airbnb somewhere and just becoming one with my own creative spirit and seeing
I think
see what comes out. I'm going to talk to the wife. She may be a little bit frazzled about me leaving her at home alone with the baby, but
I think 2 days is good. You go away and it's good for her. It's a little bit quiet time for her and your son.
yeah.
And it's good for you. I tell it to my wife all the time. I'm like, hey, I'm going the summer strong. That's a time for me where I step away from the business. I always tell her, go do something, or go do something with your friends, go away. And my kids are older now, but even when they were younger, I always told her that's important for your men. You trying to manage everything is a great way to make yourself nuts.
I agree. Well, Coach, I appreciate your time. We're coming up on the hour 40 mark here, so I'll wrap this thing up. But I thought you dropped some just invaluable wisdom and knowledge here, and I'm really excited to get this out to my audience. So, Coach, when people listen to this, where can they find you?
Strong Life Podcast. And then if they're strength coaches, I have a membership site, undergroundstrengthcoach.com. And my blog has thousands of articles and videos for free, which is Even-Esh.com. I always tell people, whatever you want to look for, type it in on the search button, and you will find so much stuff to read and go down the rabbit hole on for free learning.
Yes, sir. Well, guys, I encourage you, go check out Coach's resources, whether it's his YouTube, his website, go read his book. It's just a wealth of knowledge and information. And Coach, you've been just a tremendous figure in our field. You've impacted a lot of lives. You've impacted me. So I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast and then just all of your contributions to strength and conditioning in the fitness industry. And guys, for me, continue to engage here on YouTube. We're building up the channel. I'll be dropping more episodes of the podcast every Tuesday, coming out with more and more content. I appreciate everything that you guys are doing, supporting the channel, supporting my business. And then you can check out my website, hammerchiselperformance.com, for my coaching services, training programs. And I encourage you to check out my ebook, Dialing in Your Diet, if you're someone who wants to get started with just setting up your own nutrition for any goal, but you're not ready to work with a coach one-on-one. But anyway, guys, we'll catch you on the next episode. And Coach Even-Esh, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, John.